So trademark law is the law that specifically protects what are known as distinctive marks or product appearance. So basically, if you are connecting a logo or an item specifically to a certain business or company, it's a pretty good chance that that is a trademark. It applies to shapes, like a Coca-Cola bottle is a trademarked shape. It refers to colors. Tiffany blue, for example, is its own trademarked color. Certain sounds, like the NBC chime, the ding, 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 that is actually a trademarked sound. Play-Doh is a trademarked scent. And obviously, the phrases is probably the one you're most familiar with. Something like the Just Do It for Nike, that is also a trademarked phrase. So like I said, if you can attach it to a certain brand, then it very likely is a trademarked thing. If you ever are wondering if something that you're using or referencing is protected by trademark, the US Patent and Trademark Office is searchable, so you can go in there and you can actually find that. So how does this apply to us as authors? This basically means that if something is trademarked, you have to be cautious about how you use it. In text, for the most part, you have free game to use it as long as you're not using it in a way that could be considered defamatory. So the quote there, I'll read it for you. Authors of fiction and other creative genres are free to use trademarks in their work, provided they take care not to use a name in a way that could be considered defamatory. This comes from the Chicago Manual of Style and how it talks about how we use trademark. So you can talk about your character owning an iPhone, you can talk about them going to Starbucks, you can use all of those kinds of things. The exception would be you don't want to talk about maybe your character texting on an iPhone right before they get into a car accident. You probably don't want your character to kick their car and call their Toyota Corolla a piece of shit. You probably wouldn't want to do that. You would want them to just say, my car's a piece of shit. You wouldn't want to go and have it be very specific because that could be considered defamatory. The most important thing, though, is with your character art and your covers, you don't want to have anything that could be a trademark in those places. So that is the biggest no. If your character likes Starbucks a lot, you can put a cup there, you can make it look like a to-go cup, but it can't have the Starbucks logo or something that could be considered the Starbucks logo on it. But in text, you're fine. Now, sometimes there are things that are trademarked that we're kind of like, really, this is a trademark? And so we want to pay attention to what those trademarks are so that if we're using them in our books, we're spelling them the way that they should appear based on the brand. So if you are using any kind of Apple product, they own 130 some trademarks. You would want to know how they spell it in their materials. So the lowercase I with the capital P for iPhone or iPad, it would be important that you spell it that way. Your Chicago Manual of Style, which any US editor is going to use, they should know this and they should be able to catch those for you if you don't know or you miss it. There are some weird ones, like Velcro is still technically under a trademark, but it's starting to lose its distinctiveness. And so it's starting to fade away. Like a dumpster used to be capitalized because it's a type of trash receptacle, but it's not anymore because we don't use that word that way anymore. Xerox is starting to go away because we talk about Xeroxing something. So it does change sometimes, but even if you were to capitalize it, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Like, we all know what you mean. But some of the things that you might not be sure of are like specific types of flowers. Flowers usually aren't capitalized, but if they're a trademark type of flower, like the Queen of the Market aster, that is capitalized. The Hobbit is something that is trademarked. The title of the book, the title of the movies, the merchandise, all of that. So because of its recognition, that is probably always going to be trademarked. The Chicago Manual of Style, because it's multiple books with the same title, also gets some trademark protection. One of the things you would want to be cautious with is any kind of reference to prescription drugs. That is something we really just should never use the trademark name for, and you should try to stick to the generic unless you absolutely have to, which for most fiction writers, we probably don't actually have to.